Okay, good morning, everyone. Good morning. Today, we're continuing learning from this book, Likuti Torah, a book of the wisdom of the rabbis of Chabad, written about 250 years ago by the first Rebbe of Chabad. But first, let's begin the day by giving charity. Everyone should begin the day by giving charity, no matter where you are, no matter who you are. You should give charity. Charity is very important. Even how poor you are, you should try to give to others. Here's our charity box. Here's our money. Charity saves from all bad things, and it brings all good things. Blessing and success to all of you. Now, just to reiterate a little bit, we're talking about a strange story which appears in the Talmud. And this strange story is going to tell us something very, very essential about Judaism, and consequently something very important about reality. What is reality? Now, the secret of reality, what is real? What is real? Real means something that exists. If it exists, it's real. If it doesn't really exist, then it's not real. But what if I were to tell you, like, for instance, hypnotized? The person is hypnotized to believe that that he's got an apple growing on his nose. He's hypnotized. Does he really have, or does he not have? Well, to the people who are hypnotizing him, he knows that he doesn't. But the person himself, he does. So what's the reality? What's the real truth? What's the real truth? Well, you can say, in fact, there was one time he didn't have an apple on his nose, and there was this artificial thing that was done to his mind to convince him that he does. So he doesn't really have an apple on his nose. But you can't convince this person of that. The person is 100% convinced that he has an apple on his nose, and he thinks that everybody else is crazy. Just one moment. Boker Tov. Boker Tov Yisrael. Shiach Yom Tov. So how can you convince this person that he hasn't really got an apple on his nose? How can you convince him? So you have to have someone from the outside that he really, really trusts, and that'll come to him and say, listen, I want you to tell you, I know you believe you have an apple, and you feel you have you look in the mirror, you see an apple on your nose. The hypnotist was like really good. But listen, I'm your friend, right? You know me. I'm telling you, you've been hypnotized, you don't have an apple on your nose. So this person, now he starts to think, well, how could it be? My best friend is lying to me. How could it possibly? I'm sure that I do. According to all the measurements, he measures it according to with a ruler and everything. Takes pictures of himself, huh? In the pictures, he also sees that he has an apple on his nose. He was really hypnotized very well. So does he or does not? So it depends on how much he trusts this other person to realize that maybe there's a different reality that I don't see. That's something like what we're doing right now. We look at the world and we think that the world is independent. It just exists. That's all. There's no God that's creating the world. There's no real reason why the world is being created. Make up your own reason, whatever is best. So here's our good friend, the Rebbe, is trying to tell us, no, listen, the fact is the world is a creation, and the world is infinitely more important than you can possibly imagine, infinitely more real, possibly. What's the apple on your nose is your false egotism. The false egotism, the fact that you think that there is no creator and that there's no real reason and there's no, that this world is just a little speck of nothingness floating around in, the infinite cosmos, whatever. And there's, you row your boat down the stream, whatever. But the Rebbe is trying to tell us that it's not so. The Rebbe is trying to tell us that it's not so. That the fact of the matter is there is God. And God is creating us, and He's creating us for an amazingly infinite purpose and reason that we can't fathom. But it's not to go to heaven. Going to heaven is a little glimpse of the fact that there's more to this world than meets the eye. That's what heaven is. Okay, so it brings a story to illustrate this. And that there's an argument, the story goes like this, that there's an argument in heaven, in the heavenly court, between the souls in the heavenly court and God. and they can't decide what the answer is. So they call Rabbi Bar Nachmani, who was one of the Talmud scholars living in the world. And they said, we're going to bring him up into heaven and he's going to decide, what the law is. Now, what they're arguing about up in heaven is a law that's on the earth. Is a certain thing pure? Is it not pure? And a certain thing in the world they're dealing with. They're not arguing up in heaven, should we, create the world of what type of angels should we make in the world of Atzilut or something like that. They're not. The argument is about a very simple law, one of the laws that appears in our Torah portion. So immediately this arouses all sorts of questions. This is talking about true reality. True reality. God, there's the heavenly court that argues with him, and they can't decide, and they call a rabbi from this world to make the final decision. So that automatically arouses all sorts of questions. What is God? God is called the Holy One, blessed be He. What is the Holy One, blessed be He? That you can argue with him, you can defeat him in an argument. What is that? That doesn't make any sense. That's the opposite of Judaism. Judaism says that God is one. There's nothing except for God. God is the creator of all being. And all of a sudden, there's people arguing with him. And what is the heavenly court? And who is this Rabbi Bar Nachman? How can he decide something that's in the heavens they can't decide, and he decides it? So what's going on? So we're trying to find out that reality is not what we think it is. Reality is not what we think. There's a creator. There's a heavenly court. And that this world is so important that they have to come down into this world to ask people, Torah scholars in this world, to decide laws for them. Okay, so if so, we've just entered in a fourth, in factor in our computations. That's the Torah. The Torah. So we have, what is the Holy One, blessed be He? What is this heavenly court? What does this mean, the heavenly court? What is the importance of the rabbis in this world? And what's the Torah? The Torah holds this whole business together. They're arguing about something in the Torah, and he decides the Torah with God, with the Torah, with the heavenly court is deciding things, Torah issues. Okay, so here we go. Ready? So okay. By the way, as we're learning this, it explains a lot of sort of unexplainable things. Perhaps the main one of which is, what are the Jewish people? What are the Jewish people? We see that in the news, the Jewish people are always in the front, and the Jewish people, and things that the Jewish people do, is which everyone else does, are considered to be the worst crimes in the world. The Jews fight back. You can't fight back. Now that fight back. What are you talking about? That's a crime. Everybody's killing everybody else in the world. They're massacring people all over the world, in Sudan and this. And then Islam is sworn to just destroy everybody they can in the whole world. And the whole world is for Islam. The whole thing doesn't. But the Jews, they're always the, how do you say, there's a song by Bob Dylan, the neighborhood bully. The Jews they're the neighborhood bully, right? They get bombed, they get shot. They're the ones that make all the trouble. So why? What's going on? Why? So there's all sorts of answers and all sorts of pundits and all sorts of of professors and experts and giving their opinion, why the Jews really are bad, or why the Jews aren't bad, or why are they scapegoating us, and how ridiculous it is that they're scapegoating us, and et cetera, et cetera. But nobody really has touched on the real point. The real point is that the whole entire world depends on the Jews. Because the Jews were chosen by God to keep the world together, to tell everyone how much God loves them and how important human beings are. And that's the Jews, and only the Jews have this job. And so every human being is dependent on the Jewish people to find out what's really going on, what's really here. The connection of the world to God are the Jewish people. That's the way God decided it. I didn't create the world. If it was up to me, I would make the world like all the atheists, just sort of floating around in the world. But it's not. It wasn't up to me. I didn't create the world. What can you do? So that's why all of a sudden the Jews are really important. So now the Rebbe is trying to tell us the positive aspect of this. positive aspect of this, not the why who appointed you, right? Who you're the teacher's pet or something like that, the Jewish people. Oh, okay, so here we go. So the Rebbe says like this: there is what's called the heavenly court. And the heavenly court, what is the heavenly court? The heavenly court is how the understanding of God, becomes manifested. In other words, you can't understand God, but there are aspects of God you certainly can understand, right? The main essence of what God is totally incomprehensible. It makes no sense, right? According to science, you can't prove there's a creator. We're being created. That's just ridiculous, right? But it's true. And that can't be understood. But certain things can be understood. That's all these Kabbalistic books are written, right? About these levels of creation with Atzilut and Bria and Yetzirah and the 10 Sfirot and all these things, which God created so that we could understand. That's the motto of Judaism, is to understand God. Shema Yisrael. Shema means understand. Shema, understand, Jews. And then once what you do, little bit you do understand of God, you can come to love God. It becomes personal to you. It's not just a philosophical idea. It becomes alive. God is really creating me. Well, I can love God. So you can love God. There's also different levels of God, deeper levels of God, loving God with all of your heart, but this comes from understanding. The understanding, that's what's called the rakia. That's what's called the heavens, the firmament. So to speak, godliness becomes firm. And that's where this holy court is drawing down more understanding of the essence of God into, right, more the essence of God into the understanding of God. The essence of God's, or faith in God, that's called chachma. And understanding God, that's called bina. Okay, so that's what we say. We go. Okay, so how does that cause? By us learning Torah down here in the world. Us Jews learning Torah, that's God gave the Torah in the world. By us learning Torah in the world, Talmud, understanding ideas, mundane ideas which have nothing to do with spirituality, nothing to do with Kabbalah, nothing to do with mysticism, nothing whatsoever, right? We're talking about, and take our case here. If a white discoloration appears on a person's skin and afterwards there's a hair, then the person is unclean. And if the hair comes first, then the person is not declared impure. It's just a regular discoloration. What if there's a doubt? So they didn't know, so they came and they asked, okay, what they're talking about is a very mundane thing, right? If a person is impure, he has to go outside of the camp. He can't be by people, etc. There's different laws about it. But the whole thing is very, very mundane. This is that when by us learning Torah in the world, is that causes this. But you have to learn Torah with the proper attitude, and obtaining the proper attitude, that's through prayer. Now, prayer is not exactly what everybody else thinks prayer is. Prayer is requesting from God, please, God, give me my daily bread or something. That's part of prayer. You're supposed to pray to God for everything. But the main thing of prayer is appreciating God. It's called avodat halev, the service of the heart. He says the Rebbe like this: once a person starts to appreciate what God is, and once a person starts to appreciate how God is creating everything, and once a person starts to appreciate how God is totally above understanding, but we can bring a little bit into understanding, when a person thinks about this, then he starts to get bitter. Bitter. Why do you get bitter? You get bitter because you realize that up to now, your whole life has been built on false assumptions. Like you bought whatever it is, you were a con man sold you the Brooklyn Bridge, right? How do they call it? In con man, right? Sold you the Brooklyn Bridge. He brings witnesses, he brings friends, he brings this, he takes some wines and dines you. He brings the what is it? The documentation that he represents the state of New York, and that they want to sell the bridge, and it's a secret deal. Nobody should know about it. You bought the Brooklyn Bridge. You're really happy about it, and you got your pictures in the paper. And then you realize someone says, you've just been fooled. You don't own the Brooklyn Bridge. Oh, now he feels tremendously bitter. When a person lives his whole life and he realizes that he didn't take the creator of the universe into account, that he was missing how really important and loved he is by God, and that he's been missing the true, how do you say, importance of every moment of his life. So you become very bitter. You realize how far away you are from the creator, you become bitter. So that's what it means, that you don't give secrets of the Torah except to a person whose heart is, I say, worried, empty inside of him. What does it mean, empty? That's a bad thing. We're not talking about being depressed. Depression is to be avoided at all costs. Depression is a terrible stumbling block. It opens the door to any sorts of, how do you say, suicide, spiritual suicide. I don't care. What do I care? How do they say? Whatever. When a person gets depressed, he has no meaning in his life. He feels empty. He feels terrible. Every second is like a torture to him. And there's no meaning. He knows there's no meaning. There's empty. Everything is empty. So he's willing to take drugs, anything you want, right? Anything. That's bad. Here we're talking about a different type of emptiness. Here we're talking about an emptiness that a person realizes that up to now he's been far away from the truth, and that the truth has it's accessible to him, and he hasn't been using it. It means to say, ma sheyidag libo, a person's heart should be bitter inside of him because it's impossible for him to understand the essence of what God is. And he realizes how good God is. Kigama gilui shabaolamos, even the revelations of godliness, even the upper worlds, all the things you read about in Kabbalah, this is like a little drop in the sea alone. So in a way, that's why we're learning Chassidut, is to have this bitterness. Now, we're not talking about being bitter all day and even for an hour. We're talking about being bitter for 2 seconds, 5 seconds. If a person thinks, wow, what am I doing? And I've been wasting my time with foolishness, with this. I have to get out of here. Now, this has to be taken with 1,000 grains of salt, because a person can get bitter and he can say he divorces his wife and he leaves his home and goes and lives on a mountain or somewhere like that, because he only wants the truth. That's not that. The truth is to be found in the world, but it has to have the proper attitude. So he says that's why it says that his heart is empty inside of him, because he's bitter, but he wants to do something about it. It activates him. It doesn't deactivate him. Depression turns your switches off. You're dead. And bitterness, this type of bitterness, it makes you dynamic. I want to do something. I want to get out of here. Which is not the case, which is not the case, infinite godliness, lace machshava, there's no thought that can grasp God at all. All this is the whole idea of prayer. That's the whole idea of prayer. Like it says in it's another mimer. So when a person prays and he realizes who he's praying to, you're praying to the infinite creator who's creating you. So you say, okay, that's pretty understandable. No, but that God also is creating the angels. You know what an angel is? No. Well, the angels, that's the spiritual levels that everybody else in the world prays to. That's not God. God is not spiritual. The ladder of prayer, the rungs of the ladder of prayer go up through the spiritual worlds, but it's only in order to understand that that's not God. The angels are not God, and the world of Atzilut is not God, and this is not God. What is God? We don't know. It's you're bitter because you know that the truth is there and that you're far from it and you want to get to it. So it makes a bitterness in the past. Where have I been? I told you the story about Rav Sadia Gaon, that they caught him, in bitter repentance. He was crying, rolling in snow. They said, what are you doing that? He said, because today I know more about God than I did yesterday. I'm repenting for what I did yesterday. Right? Yesterday, I didn't know. If I would have known God yesterday like I know him today, I would have served him totally differently. I said, okay, good. It's through ignorance. He didn't know any better. But the fact of the matter is, he didn't serve God the way, with the same love and devotion and positivity and joy yesterday as he does today. So he feels bad because of it. So that's a very positive thing. How to always improve yourself. How to always improve yourself. I think I've said this maybe 500 times at least, but nowadays, one of the biggest industries is self-improvement industry, right? There's seminars and there's lectures and there's courses about how to improve yourself. Improve yourself. Ideally, that's what university is supposed to be. I mean, now I think it's exactly the opposite. But it's teaching people decadence and who knows the self-destruction and but ideally, university is supposed to be that it's whets your curiosity. You become empty inside. You're not satisfied. Oh, that's the word. You're not satisfied with where you are. You want more. Okay, that's the way it is physically in the physical world. But the Rebbe is saying also should be the same thing in the spiritual worlds, and it should be in the same thing with godly. The godliness you want more. So it says that's the whole idea of prayer. Prayer is that you're striving to connect yourself with a greater reality than what you've been up to now. That's called like a fire going up. That what it says. That's what it says. When you learn the Torah, it says Pekudi Hashem Yesharim. Says the laws of God are straight. They make you happy. When it says they make you happy, it implies that first of all you weren't happy. They make you happy. Why? Because a person's heart is worried inside of him. So how can you quench this? It says by means of prayer. Prayer makes you even more thirsty for godliness. How do you quench this godliness? Torah. By means of learning the Torah, Yismach Libo, a person becomes happy. Because even though that we said, yes, the greatness of God is incomprehensible, you can't possibly understand what God is, and you want to, there's no thought that grasps in God. But we have to remember that the Torah is not just a book written by Moses. It's not a book describing something else. The Torah is the wisdom of God. When a person learns the Torah, that the soul is grasped in the ideas of the Torah, then now this is only for Jews. By means of this, who tefisa umislabeshes b'kodesh baruch hu mamash, then he is united with God. That's the idea that God took the Jews out of Egypt and gave the Jews the Torah. And the Torah is God's brain. And even more, it says the Torah is God's soul. Ana nafshi katavit yahavit. This is God. God said, when I gave the Torah, I wrote down my soul. God is totally one. That's written in chapter 4 and 5 in the Tanya, right in the beginning of the Tanya. Okay, another place. Hine, in Israel, that's the idea that the Jewish people are attached to the Torah, and the Torah is attached to God. Kamo, just like hakesher, like a knot, right? You connect two things. You take two separate things, liot kashurim, that they become connected and tied together. The kesher mitzvah chazak was a tremendously powerful attachment, just like the soul of Yehonatan was tied to the soul of King David. So in King David, you look over there, it's in, what is it, in Malachim Beis, is it, right? Second book of Kings. No, I'm sorry. The book of Samuel. I'm a mistake. Second book of Samuel. So it talks about over there that King David was hated by King Saul. King Saul was appointed by Samuel, the prophet Samuel, and King Saul did some things that disqualified him to be king, very minute things, and he wanted to kill David, who David was also coronated, but in secret to be king. And David's best bosom friend was King Saul's son, Yehonatan. And it said they had a deep friendship, which is a deep love of friendship, which is incomparable. Incomparable. It says like the soul of Yonatan was attached to the soul of King David. Hine mitzvahs kriya b'divrei Torah. When you say the words of the Torah, it's explained in a book called Sefer Yetzirah. Sefer Yetzirah is perhaps the first Kabbalah book. It was a book given, it says, by God to Abraham. It says over there, she'eser sfirot, that the 10 aspects of godliness, b'li ma, they are 10 facets of God's personality, but they're God's personality, they're infinite. So they're 10 sfirot, and they are without any substance. Like, for instance, like a flame when it is detached inside of the coal. Okay, so it says that God's personality is brought out to revelation by us, by learning the Torah. By the Torah. God's personality is God's 10 sefirot. You want to reveal God's love. You want to reveal God's greatness. You want to reveal God's beauty, His splendor into the world. That's it's by means of the Torah. Okay, now just make a little reset over here to understand what's going on. As I've said hundreds of times already, the point of Chassidut is that this physical world is infinitely important, much more incomparably important, more valuable and important to God than all of the upper spiritual worlds, as wonderful as those worlds are. As wonderful the worlds are, right? We said all these other religions and things, billions of people are striving to go to heaven. They want to go to heaven, then go to heaven, then it's their motivation in life to go to heaven and not go to hell. Judaism says we have to bring heaven here, or even more, we have to reveal higher than heaven here. Higher than heaven. We have to reveal the reason why God is making heaven in this physical world. But in order to do that, we have to work. That's the whole story of the Bible. Right? The whole story of the Bible. That God, that before God created the world, there was nothing. There was no time. There was no before. This world is infinitely important to God. Every detail in it is infinite. It's above time. We can't really understand it. But God put us here in the world, so we should reveal that in the world. We should reveal that our whole way of looking at the world is only from our point of view. But we have to, and that's not true. That's not true. That's why we're bitter, because we realize that we're fooling ourselves. Or maybe we can say God fooled us. I mean, God created it this way. Okay, so you want to bring out the truth. This is the truth. The oneness of God is like a fire which is inside of a coal. Okay, so it says just like a flame which is inside of a coal, when it's inside of that coal, it's like glowing, it's concealed. In Kedei, in order you want to bring it out and to be revealed, this is by you have to blow on it, something, right? There's a bellows. They used to have a bellows, right? You blow on the fire, it makes it big. V'kach al derech mashal, similarly, by means of the wind that comes out of your mouth when you say words of Torah. This is called ruach mamala. It says that when God created man, that He created God, He created man to what is a living. What is it? What's the sentence in the Torah? He created a living creation. It says a ruach mamala, a speaking spirit. In Hebrew, another word for man is medaber. Medaber. Minerals are called domem. They can't speak. They're silent. Minerals are called domem. Domem means silent. And plants are tzameach. Animals are called chai. And man is called medaber. Medaber is like the opposite of domem. Domem means silent. And man, the essence of man is that he speaks. Man can speak. Other animals also speak, but they don't really speak. They don't really speak. They can communicate. They yell out, I yell, ooh, ah, like that, and that's sort of right. You hear one bird goes, deet, 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 another bird on the other corner goes, deet, 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 right? One lion hears another lion, or the baby lion calls to the mother. They communicate. Seals, whatever it is that they found that porpoises have some sort of a complicated means of communicating with them, but it's not words. They don't give ideas to one another. The porpoises say, hey, what are we living here in the world for? Let's, learn mathematics. They can't go out of themselves, out of their nature. Speaking, you can go out of your nature. Somebody can stand up on the podium saying, listen, everybody, we have to stop being depressed all the time. Everybody says, well, we like being depressed. We have to stop it. And they can convince everybody to stop being depressed. You can change people. That's speaking. Well, we can change the whole world also. And that's what he says. When the main thing of speech is not to be speaking of matters of the world. Speech was created to learn the Torah. The Torah is God's will, but God gave it in the world. It's words. God creates the world also with words. You want to bring the godliness out of the words of creation, you have to use the words of Torah. And then it says the breath that you put out, the wind that you put out by learning Torah, by means of this, it's like blowing on a coal. You draw the light of the Torah from its source to be from concealment to be revealed. And that's what it says, what we bless in the Torah. And when we make a blessing in the Torah in the morning, no teina Torah, that God gives the Torah. When you're called up to the Torah, no teina Torah. We say, God, you give us the Torah. We're not saying you gave us the Torah. You give us the Torah now. He is giving, hoveh, present. Ki ruach, because this whole idea, when you say words of the Torah, that suddenly it arouses the godliness which is in the world. Okay, now I know this is, we've learned Torah, I learned Torah, and you don't see all of a sudden, godliness, just the world just like a big curtain opens up and you just see the infinite stratos or something like that. God is not a thing you can see with your eyes. God is not a thing. Like I said before, God doesn't exist. God creates all existence. God's existence is infinitely more, infinite than we can possibly imagine. God is creating his more real. Oh, that's a good word. So it says, when you learn the Torah is the connector. That's this idea of coming to Rabbi Mar Nachmani. That's what we're going to see. That's the reason that these rabbis had the power. They could raise the dead. It says Rabbi Yeshua ben Rabbi Yehuda Hanassi raised the dead. That's what it says. That by means of this spirit of the wind that comes out of your mouth when you learn the Torah, there's drawn down afterwards this fire, which this is the godliness which is concealed in the world. But this spirit, this wind comes out. This depends on who the person is. The person is, when I learn the Torah, it's not the same thing as when Rabbi Bar Nachmani learns the Torah, the Talmud. The Tanaim and the Amoraim, these people were called the Pharisees or whatever they're called disparagingly. These people that had the power to do amazing miracles and raise the dead, that they were the level of what's called the great awareness of God, Mochin the Godlos. They had the power to draw down in their speech this revelation of the light of the Torah, this flame which is concealed in the coal. Shehu bechinas Shem Havaya. This is the name of Yud-Kei Vav-Kei. God creates the world with the name Elokecha. It says Hashem Elokecha with Kim, and the name that God created the world with is Elokim, and the Torah comes from the name Yud-Kei Vav-Kei, and therefore it says that the name of God Yud-Kei Vav-Kei, right, Havaya, we said, is a consuming fire. Therefore, these rabbis, that they learned the Torah properly with the proper attitude, they could do amazing miracles. They could do amazing wonders. They could bring the dead back to life. That's what it says in the Talmud. Rabbi Pinchas ben Yair, it says, Ginei Chaloki, there's the whole river, that he divided a river. He split the river like Moses. It says, Ganai, he says, Ganai, river Ganai. That was the name of Ginai. It says, Chalukli Memech, divide the waters. He had to go across. I know what did Rabbi Pinchas ben Yair, what did he do? He took a sea and he made it into dry land, like Moses did. He had 3 million people, and the merit of all of them, Moses was able to split the sea. Pinchas ben Yair did it alone. What is this idea of splitting the sea? Sea and dry land. This is what's called the concealed worlds, the upper worlds, and this physical world, the revealed world. Hainu ahelim, everything that was concealed in the whole entire upper worlds, the whole order of the chain of creation, he was able to reveal through the Torah. Why? The revealing the infinite light of God that was drawn down by means of the Torah, this comes above the whole entire creation. This is higher. So he drew from a power which is above existence. Like we said, God creates all existence. That's where the Torah comes from. And from this aspect of where the source of the Torah is equal the concealed worlds and the revealed worlds. Shehu b'chinas l'miksei shamayim Ad katzeh, from the end of the heavens until the end. It says that's what is the whole idea, that the heavens, da alma ilah, that the heavens, that's what's all concealed from us. All the spiritual aspect, the life. It's almost like, say, a sick person, a person is sick, a person is unconscious. He's unconscious, he's in a coma. And you come into the room, is he alive? Is grandpa alive or is he not alive? Look at this. It looks terrible. Looks terrible. Someone comes in and says, the doctors have been working on him. We don't know what to do. He's unconscious. Another person comes in and says, watch this. I want to show you something. He used to like this song. Listen to this song. Kaylee. All of a sudden he opens up his eyes. What's that? What's that? What was that song? What happened? Grandpa's alive. He loved the song. It brought out his soul. The same thing with the world. The world is in a coma. It's in a coma. The only way we can wake up the world from its coma, bring back the life in the world, says that's through the Torah. But not everybody knows how to use it properly. These great men of the Talmud, they did know how to use it. They did know. And therefore, they were able to split the sea, which that brings the spiritual to be revealed. The spiritual world is concealed from us, like this person who's in a coma. How can you bring out the spiritual from this person? You have to have something that's higher. It says the heavens, they're concealed, which is not the case. The infinite light of God, which is in the Torah, it's not relevant, concealed or revealed. There's no end to the light of godliness. God forbid, chas v'shalom. God is not limited. And therefore, by means of drawing down this light, by means of the Torah, as Rabbi Pinchas ben Yair was able to, in our example, we said, split the sea. He could change the sea, what's concealed, the water, which conceals everything in it, he could make it revealed. Everything was revealed. Just like Moses did in Mount Sinai. We just finished learning about that. All the concealed worlds, and although the revealed world, this physical world is equal to this level. This is totally above the whole entire creation. So the Torah is coming from the Creator. So these souls, these great souls, Rabbi Pinchas ben Yair, Rabbi Yehuda Nasi, all these people, they're the ones that merit that they can learn in what's called the heavenly court. They can draw down understanding, that's the court, the firmament, they can draw down by learning Torah above understanding into understanding, making above understanding the infiniteness of God to make it firm. That's the firmament also that God made on the second day of creation. Because the Torah, the Torah is found in all the worlds. It's found in Atzilut, it's found in Bria, Yetzirah, and Asiyah. Just like, for instance, take an example, the commandment of tzitzit. Tzitzit. Right, you have here, I got a garment, see, there's the garment, and here are the tzitzit on the corner of the garment, right? Okay, now this is a very big commandment. Very big commandment. What's the big commandment? It's a garment. It's a garment. You go to any store, you can buy a garment, right? You buy undershirts. It's a big deal. Right? Buy an undershirt, and we want to take a shirt, take an undershirt, and put a couple ribbons on the corner. You got it, right? It says no, you don't have it. This is a big commandment because it's not taking the physical world and doing exactly what God wants, so to speak. It's the reason why God created the world. It says that even though that tzitzit, the commandment, let me make this bigger. I forget to make it bigger. Oh, yeah. Tzitzit, for instance, is made of wool. The Torah is found in every world, so it must be that there's also this commandment of tzitzit are found in every world, even the world of Atzilut. Atzilut is like the highest dimension of godliness in the Creator. That's right. In the creation, the highest level of godliness in the creation. We said that there's 4 dimensions of reality of creation. There's Atzilut, there's Bria, Yetzirah, and Asiyah. Asiyah is the lowest. That's the lowest dimension. That's like one-dimensional. and Yetzirah is like 2-dimensional, and then Bria is 3-dimensional, and Atzilus is 4-dimensional. Of course, we're talking about this physical world that we think we're 4-dimensional. This is really I'm just giving an example. It's the example the Rebbe gave. In the case, this is Atzilut is like 4-dimensional godliness, right? So in every one of these 4 dimensions is God, is the Torah. So what is tzitzit in Atzilut? Like it says, V'hakavasim hifrid Yaakov. It says, for instance, Jacob, when he was working but with Lavan, so he worked with the flock. So he had the sheep. So he said that the sheep Yaakov separated, and he used he grazed the sheep, brought up the sheep. So it says when Yaakov did that, bring up the sheep, that was doing commandments. So sometimes it says like the sticks that he put in front of the sheep, that was like the commandment of tefillin, corresponding to tefillin that we do today, because he did all these things spiritual. Remember, we learned last week in Shmini that there were rabbis like Rabbi Yeshua ben Bar Yochai, that they were able to do all the commandments in a spiritual way when he was because they had no choice. They were in the cave, running away from the Romans. So he didn't have all these commandments like lulav and etrog. He didn't have, so he could do them spiritually. Well, Yaakov also was before the Torah was given, but he knew that there was such a thing as the Torah. He knew that that's the purpose of the world. So the physical things that he did it with the intention, I'm doing what God wants. And he was a different type of a person than we were. He was more devoted and genuine. But nevertheless, that's like the commandment of tzitzit. It says also by Daniel's vision. Said he saw God sitting on a throne, whatever this, we're talking about the world of Atzilut, and the hairs of his head was like white wool. And also the 4 sections of the tefillin, they are like in Atzilut, that corresponds to Chachma, Bina, and Dat. Dat is divided into 2. The knot, the knot that you tie in the tefillin in the back, this is like which is in the shape of a dalid. This is above, like the external aspect of malchut, of tavuna. Tavuna is an aspect of bina, God's bina. In any case, all these spiritual levels we have in the tefillin, that the top of the tefillin represents the 4 aspects of God's intellect, and the knot is the lowest aspect of God's 10 sefirot, and the straps that come down, they come from, this is even lower, which is not the case. That's the external of the tefillin. What about the parchments that the tefillin is written on? This is by made of fixing up the skin of the animal, and etc. Above all these levels as malchut, etc. Okay, so I don't want to go into this too deeply, but what the Rebbe is trying to say is like this. Everything in this physical world has a spiritual source. How much more so the Torah, the commandments? It also has, in addition to the fact that it comes from the essence of God, it's God's will. But in between the essence of God's will, when you do the Torah, you're learning the Torah, you're doing a commandment, you're doing the essence of God's will. But also in between, there's all these spiritual levels that also are manifesting the same exact principle, but in a little bit lower way than the essence. There's many, many garments of thought, etc. So it is in a person. All these different garments. Okay, one second. Right, okay. So that's what it says. Happy is one who comes to hear in the upper worlds, and what he learned in this world, he still has. Why? Because there's, as well as doing the commandments in this physical world, there's also learning in this physical world is also found in the upper worlds. All the commandments. The Rebbe just gave us an example of tzitzit and tefillah, how they are in the world of Atzilut, aspect of Atzilut. Well, also there's learning Torah. There's also learning Torah in these upper worlds. And by means of learning Torah in this world with the proper attitude that it's God's Torah, as by means of this, you merit to learn also Torah in heaven. What is tzitzis, what is tefillin and atzilut? Also, all the commandments. All the commandments. So that's what it says, for instance, by King Solomon. It says that King Solomon could say 3,000 examples on anything that you talk to him. Anything that you, any subject in the world, King Solomon could give 3,000 examples of levels higher, each one higher and higher and higher in the spiritual worlds. And so that's this idea of the heavenly court. The heavenly court, those are souls in the upper level of heaven, which we said is Bina, that there is shining the Chabad of Atzilut because they learned the Torah, because the whole idea of the Torah is like blowing on a glowing coal. It brings godliness to be revealed because the Torah comes from such a tremendously high source. And says the Rebbe that the Torah's high source comes through these upper worlds. And that's this whole idea of the heavenly court, that they decide laws. In other words, it decides what's going to be in this physical world, because the physical world is so tremendously important. So it's deciding how godliness is supposed to come down into the world. After God gave the Torah to the Jewish people, so these decisions are now in our hands. They're not in God's hands anymore. They're in our hands. The rabbis decide. And that's exactly what was happening. It's this upper court, how it can make decisions, because they're deciding what the law should be, how it should come into the world. But the heavenly court is not, we're going to learn how, as holy. It's not as, how do you say, important as learning Torah in this physical world. Learning Torah in the physical world, that's what sets the whole thing off. I gave the example before, the Rebbe gives it also, like in a rowboat, you have oars, and the oars push the, right, and it churns the water around. That's what learning Torah in this physical world does. It churns the upper worlds around so that they come. Okay, so today we learned a little bit about the dynamics of what happens when a Jew learns the Torah in this physical world, how it sets this amazing chain reaction in all of the upper worlds.